Hello everyone, my name is Feña Ortalli. I'm an improviser from Argentina. I was born in Argentina 4 years ago, and 4 years ago I moved to Spain. I moved to Madrid, where I play and perform. I've been improvising for almost 20 years, and I always loved to discover new things that I could research and then eventually teach. And one of the things that I like the most about teaching is to share new ideas, or to share ideas that were developed for other purposes that now we can apply to improvisation. And that is how I bumped into a book that I really like. It's called Grammatica, della fantasia, it's fantasy of grammar, which was written by an Italian pedagogist called Gianni Rodari. You should look for all other books and writings about him, because he was very, very good. He used to work with children in small towns and villages in Italy, and he said he wanted to reverse the educational flow, which means that he didn't want to go and teach the students and teach the kids, the children, but to learn from them. So he used to go to these small villages and these tiny schools with his notebook and just play with kids, because, you know, kids are natural improvisers. And one of the chapters from that book was called The Tiny Glass Man. And it was amazing how, after I finished reading that particular chapter, I got the idea of, okay, what if we use this to create deeper, stronger, more human characters? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the example that Rodari used in his book, and we are going to try and practice how we can write about a certain character. The example that Rodari uses is glass. So we take an element, think about the three main characteristics of that element, and then translate them into human qualities. So, for instance, in the example, if I ask you to name what are the three main characteristics of glass, you will probably say transparency, fragility, and probably smoothness or reflectness. I don't know if that's a word, but that's what most people say when I ask them. Every time I teach this class, I ask the students to name these characteristics, and they always say the same. So let's start with the first two that always come to our mind, which are transparency and fragility. So this is when we do this translation into the human quality. How do we use transparency as a human quality? So, for instance, it's a person that's very honest, very sincere, very open. You can see right through this person. We use that analogy. So let's say this character is very honest, very open-hearted. This character wears his heart in its sleeve. And then we can use the other one, which is fragility. And how do we use fragility to refer to a person? Again, it could be a person that's easily broken. It could be hurt, that's very sensitive. So we connect it to the previous quality, and we are talking about a person that is open, that is sincere, that is honest, and maybe that's why this character gets hurt so easily, because again, it's very open, shows its feelings, and that's why it can get hurt. So we connect those two, but we can dig deeper. And if we keep thinking about glass, we say it's fragile. Great. What happens when we break glass? It shatters, it breaks into pieces. And each of these pieces are sharp, meaning can hurt you. So let's rewind. We think about this honest, sincere character that's easily hurt or broken, and when it does get hurt, it could hurt you back. It becomes dangerous. It could say something mean or do something mean to you, because now it's not that smooth character. Now it's all sharp, and it could hurt you. So it changes its personality. And what do you do, for instance, when something that's made out of glass is broken? What do you do? Usually you just throw it away and buy something new. But if you really want to fix that, you perhaps might think of glue it back together. But we know what happens when you try to glue a glass back together. Yeah, you can see the cracks, the marks. So those are the scars. Those are the things that this character have been through. So again, this person that's very honest, that gets hurt easily, breaks into pieces and hurts you back, when it tries to recover, you still see what this character has been through. So you have to pay attention to that person. Oh, I see the scars. I recognize that this character has been through something. Let's keep playing with the idea of glass. How do we recover? How do we recycle glass? Through heat. We melt it. So again, if we think about the human world, we might think that this heat that we need to recover or to transform back this character is love, friendship, love, or anything that can help this character to form back, maybe with a different shape, maybe with a different form, a different size, but with the same element, and now it's recovered. So, to practice, I want you to think about a new element. It could be an element, as glass in general element, or it could be a bottle, for instance, or it could be a rock, or it could be sand, it could be anything, okay? Think about that element, and think about the 2 or 3 main characteristics, okay? Take your time. Once you know what element you want to use, just write down these characteristics. And then think about how you can translate them into human qualities. And when you do it, think about also the 3 dimensions of the character. This is very important because using the previous example, if we think about fragility, for instance, we might use it to describe this is a sensitive person that gets hurt easily, or we can say this is a person that has a poor health because he gets sick easily. So the dimensions that we have to think about are the physical dimension. How does the character look? How it moves? Even how it talks? What can we represent from that character? For instance, I could be, okay, if I say I'm the glass person, I could say, for instance, that it's very thin, and that even I can use my face to do it. It's very thin and clear and transparent. You can see the veins of that character. Of course, there are some things that you can represent, for instance, a way of walking, of moving, your weight, and others that you cannot. For instance, I cannot say I'm white as milk, or you can see my veins. So the things that we can represent, then we play it. The things that we cannot represent, we have to talk about it. We have to refer to them. And on the other hand, we have, for instance, the psychology, the psychological dimension. Okay, so we have the physical dimension on one hand, and we have the psychological dimension on the other, which means it's basically the personality, how we behave. So the first time is how we look, how we move. This is how we behave. And again, if we use fragility, in this case would be someone that gets hurt in their heart, in their soul, in their feelings. And this is also very interesting because personality is a mask that we use to introduce ourselves into society. So it's not the same how we behave in front of our friends, our family, our partner, our boss, our kids. We have different faces. So it's very important when we interact with other characters that we play on this idea. So we have physical dimension, we have the psychological dimension, and we have the social dimension. What is the social dimension? It's the colors, it's the specifics. So I could say in this dimension we can have the name, the job, the place where they live, how it's their family, what do they like. And this is very interesting because once we use all 3 dimensions, then we have a huge panorama of what the character is, or who the character is. So again, take your time. You have an element, think about the three main characteristics, and then describe a person, invent a person, and say, I want to introduce you to whoever. And you start describing this character already with the translation done. So don't talk about the characteristics of the element, but already talk about the human qualities of that character. So using the example, I would say, I know a friend of mine that's it's very tall and skinny, and every time I ask him something, he takes it personally. It's like he gets very angry because he thinks I'm picking on him. That's it. If I add something from the physical, I say he's very tall and skinny. Something from their personality, he gets upset very easily. Something social, he's my friend and he works in a bar, in a cafe, very nice, very posh. Those are my rebounds to what glass means. So there are no right or wrong answers. You just think about how do you feel about that object. Okay, so we're back. We introduced all these characters, and I imagine they were amazing. And it's also very interesting how we introduce these characters, because if you said, for instance, I know somebody, it's not the same that my mother is like this, because it might also reflect how do you relate to the element. So that's also very interesting. And the whole point behind this is that you don't actually have to worry about your character. You don't have to worry about building your character. Why? Because if that happens, it might mean that you will look inside you the whole time and you won't be able to connect with your stage partner or the story. So what I want is for you to talk about the other person. Define the other person's character. If you identify something, go deeper. For instance, if I find something in your way of walking, in your way of talking, in your way of playing the character, then I can add to it. I can add more. So if you pay really attention, if you pay really good look at what the other character is doing, anything could work. And this is when dialogue makes its appearance. Dialogues, in this case, are very important to define things. So don't worry about defining too much. Of course, you shouldn't define everything, but it's very useful to receive information from your character. I love it when I'm on stage and somebody would call me and say, oh, here comes Robert. He keeps talking about horses. That's great. That's a huge gift, because now that's my element. That's my inspiration. What else is true if that is true? So if Robert talks about horses the whole time, how would he move? How would he talk? Why does he talk about horses the whole time? Does he live in a horse farm? Does he like horse riding? Is he a fan of turf? Is he a fan of cowboys? It doesn't matter. I pick some of those things and use it for my character. So another exercise that we can play is very interesting, is to really pay attention to what the other is offering. So it's maybe you might play it before. It's called Hitchhikers. So one of you will get into the car, and with the character that you want, you just start driving. And at a certain point, some other player, with a very clear character, with a very strong physical choice, hitchhikes. So this person gets into the car, and the idea is that the energy of the character that enters the car is so strong that ends up going inside the other character. So the job of the one driving is to pay attention to what the other one is bringing. So where is the energy? It's in size. It's in their legs. It's in how it moves. Is it about what he's talking about? So basically, it's contagious. So the driver gets the energy, and they all play in the same energy. Once you reach destination, Player B, the one that was hitchhiking, leaves the car, and player A, the one that was driving, slowly goes back to normal. This is a great exercise to pay attention, to see, in case of player A, to pay attention to what player B is bringing. And in the case of player B, it's also very important to be bold, to be strong, to do big offers. You know you have the energy in your nose, great, but make it clear so the other one can notice. This is a great example and a great exercise to play with. Another great exercise that I want you to try is about defining. And so I call it first real date. And basically we have two players playing a couple that's having their first official date, first real life date. What does it mean? That instead of asking each other questions about what do you do, how's your family, where do you live, those are questions that are not useful at all because I leave everything, all the responsibility for the other to complete. These characters were already chatting. They were already on Tinder, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, or whatever you want to use. So they already know these things about each other. So what I want for this scene is that you actually use questions that come with information, like active questions. Instead of asking, what do you do for a living? I already know that and I define it for you. So I say, how are things in the pharmacy? I already gave you the information. I give you this gift, this present that you work in a pharmacy. So everything starts connecting to that. And you can reply back, oh, it's great, awesome, and ask something else. How's your daughter? Great. Before that line, I didn't know I had a daughter. But now I do, because of that line. So the idea is that we reveal information from each other, not from ourselves. Don't talk about your character. Talk about the other. That's very helpful. So we have these two ways of giving each other information, of paying attention. And the third, that's also very interesting, is a step further into the relationship between the characters, is you already know each other, friends, family, couple, whatever, and instead of asking each other questions to reveal information for us, for our partners, and for the audience, what we're going to use is anecdotes. And this is very interesting because if we play a scene together, for instance, I'm playing with a fellow player that plays my brother, and we are doing whatever, it doesn't matter, I can remember an anecdote and say, remember when we used to play ice hockey in that frozen lake in Montana? Great, I just gave a very clear piece of information without sounding too obvious. I gave us a background, very, very clear. Okay? So, the idea is that you play these scenes, these kinds of scenes, with a new character. With a character using the same strategy, the same exercise. So, I want you to play these three exercises and any other exercise by using a new element. So, this is the last exercise. You just think about a new element and we're going to explore the physical side of it. So start walking and see how this element would move. How does glass move? How does sand move? How does wind move? How does a clock moves? Once you get the physicality of it, your brain is not lazy and it's already starting to connect things. So your psychological dimension will start appearing. And then the social part will start to also complete. So every time you find something about your character, your name, what do you like, what you don't like, what do you do, anything that's worth share, you just say it out loud. So everybody else can do it. And this is how you get to your character. And one thing that's very important is take it to the extreme. Take it to the stupidest character ever. So then you can lower your volume, lower your energy, and create a human theatrical character. These are the exercises that I think it would help us to find deeper characters with deeper connections, and then we can finally achieve the very important thing for me in theater, which is empathy. If we really connect with the audience, they would care about what we do. So I hope you find these exercises useful, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate in ringing me, calling me, dropping me an email, and I will explain anything else. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope I see you in person very soon.